go.
It's a quick video, I don't know if it's a quick video, going over the pre-site checklist that the technician needs to do before we go out to install tables. Now, when we show up to do the checklist, one thing we need to do is make sure we're talking to somebody who can give us the information that we're looking for. If we walk in and just talk to any dealer or random person that's working in the casino, you're not going to get the information that you need the day you go in to do the install. So, the first thing you're going to want to do before you go in is take and download the latest checklist from our SharePoint website. The next thing you're going to want is the sales order, and you should get that from the nav docs inside SharePoint also. Once you have a checklist and a sales order, we need to find the right person to go into the casino and talk to. And as you look down here, I have two printouts of the checklist. The first thing you'll see is the type of installation, whether it's inserts only or electronics only, and that corresponds with the first question, or one of the first questions on the checklist. So when we're asked on the checklist what type of install you're doing, ask the casino if we're putting in full tables, electronics only, or if they're getting inserts with electronics, and match that up with the information you're seeing on the sales order. It's kind of a double check. The next thing you'll see is your contact. The salespeople have already put in the contact information. This is your person that you need to get a hold of at the casino to fill out the checklist. Now, they may not be the person you talk to that day, but they will be the person to guide you to whoever it is that is going to walk through the checklist with you to make sure you get good information. One of the last things on here that you'll see, and this is more for the actual install of the table when the day comes, is your fixed top prize and how much you're going to need to seat on the meters. It's a quick double check. You can see this information here along with pulling the configuration port on the server itself. As long as those match up, you're probably doing the correct information. As we go through the checklist, question one just says, are we receiving bonus spin or stacks? Now, you can't do one checklist for both, or you can't do both on one checklist. So if you're doing bonus spin, we need a bonus spin checklist, and if you're doing stacks, we need a stacks checklist. You may be going in to a casino where they're going to be installing bonus spin and stacks. We'll need a separate checklist for both installs because they don't run on the same server. Question two just simply asks, are you getting a full table, electronics only with insert, or electronics with inserts, or electronics only? When you're getting a full table, the other question we really need is, what color is the ring, if they use one, so that we can match up their tables with the one that we're providing. If they're getting a insert, which is what we have on this table, along with electronics, then that means that this will come most likely with the felt already on and these holes cut. What you'll do is when this insert's out of the way, you'll just have to cut a hole in the subdeck to allow the sensor to fall through. In electronics only install, you're definitely going to have to cut holes for the sensors. It's a 2.5 inch hole. It can go up to 2 5/8, but 2.5 fits perfectly. When you're doing the inserts only, if you use a 2 5/8 on the bottom deck, that'll allow you a little more spacing for that nut to spin onto the sensor, and it'll help so that you don't have to make the hole perfect. Third question is, who's going to be installing the layout on the table? Now, the first answer is the AGS production or manufacturing. All we're saying is, as the technician, we're expecting that the layout shows up with the tabletop, or the insert shows up with the layout on it. If you're doing electronics only, it means the questions asked in that, is the casino going to be installing the layout, or you? Because the important thing to know there is, if you're required to install the layout, then you need to make sure you have a stapler with you, have the staples with you, maybe have the knowledge. If you don't know how to install a layout, you need to ask your regional manager to either send you to a class to do it, or we can send you a video to help you prep for the installation that day. Question four is, does the casino already have AGS bonus spin or stacks tables on the floor? If they do, you can take a picture of the table and send it in so we can match up the equipment, match up either the layout or the style table. Question five, what are the dimensions of the drop box? This one's actually pretty easy. There's single shift and multi-shift drop boxes. In the instructions, it shows you the picture of each. The reason we need to know that is because of this hole right here that the money goes into changes shape. One cash box kind of goes into the hole, the other one's flat up against it underneath. So just write down what type of drop box they have and give us the measurements. The other thing I want to look at when you're looking at the drop box is how far back does it go, and do you think it's going to be too far and actually hit this sensor? I have seen plenty of times where when the cash box or the drop box is in, it actually hits right at the sensor itself. So when that nut goes up underneath to be secured down, you actually have to either cut part of it off, or you drop the drop box, put the sensor in, secure with the nut, and then screw the drop box back up, and it actually hits it compresses against the nut at the same time. That's somewhat common for that to happen, especially if you're doing a 1 through 7 instead of 1 through 6, so you actually have a little wider, more sensor overall travel. Where will the drop box be located? This is information that production uses. If we say it's on the left side, they're going to mount or cut the hole and make sure that that's where that shows up. So if we say drop box left side and the table that shows up has it on the right side, well, that's a check on their system where they can say, look, what we received doesn't match what's on the checklist. We either need to go back and check to see if the checklist was wrong or find out why we received the wrong table. From the dealer's perspective, where will the dealer screen mount and the double-sided monitor? Where the monitor mounts doesn't really matter all that much, but what does matter is there enough space on the side of the table, either left or right, to be able to get a mount secured up underneath. On the third tab of the checklist, you'll see the overall measurements for the mount to make sure that you have enough spacing. For the dealer terminal, the most important thing is it going to be mounted off table like this one, or is it going to be mounted in the chip tray? If it's mounted off table, we just need to make sure that there's enough space to get the mount up to the bottom of the tabletop to be able to screw it in, and either side, whichever side it's going to be. But if it's going to be in the chip tray, what we need to make sure is what type of chip tray it is. If it's a metal chip tray or if it's a plastic chip tray, that's going to change the style of mount that goes in, because this area is actually farther apart on a metal chip tray than it is on a plastic chip tray. The other thing you need to remember is if you're putting the dealer terminal into this chip tray, you're going to have the tools with you, or make sure the casino has the tools to be able to cut this hole right here for the cables to go down, and these other holes, which should be about right here on the new one, to allow you to screw in some studs to secure the mount to the chip tray. Does the table or the game require a shuffler? Some shufflers are mounted off the side of the table. Some are half cut, and some will be full cut. We need to know this information so that the table that shows up, we can confirm with the checklist to say, yes, this was the right cut based on what the checklist says. This was the correct side, because we do ask if it was on the left side or right side. If you show up with a table that has the cut into the wrong slot, you're probably going to have a bad time. Next, we need to verify what type of blackjack reading device the casino has on the table. Do they have a TechArt, no peak, or no device? Currently, this is a TechArt built into the chip tray. Sometimes you will see these built in or screwed into the table, or you'll have a no peak device, which is more of a little triangle that goes in, and that'll be screwed into the table also. We need to know that because we need to make sure there's either a notch out here for, well, right about here, for the chip tray to go in, or there'll be another plug that needs to be removed, or we need to make sure that there's a cutout for the other style devices already in the wood. Secondly, we need to know what type of chip tray they have. Is it 12 tube, like this one, or is it 15 tube? And that matters because we need to know how big this cut needs to be. If they have a 15 tube chip tray and we come in with a table that only fits 12, they're going to end up having to either notch this out, or if we show up with a 15 tube table and they only use 12, then this isn't going to fit at all, and we're going to have to probably have to order a new table. So I've pulled this equipment out so you can see it. The next thing we need to think about is what cable, Cat5 cables we're going to need to do the install. We're going to go from the server to a switch, from the switch back to the table controller, and from the switch up to a laptop. Now, this isn't where all the equipment has to go, but when you're talking to the casino, one of the things you have to ask is, where is this server going to be housed? Is it going to be in the table? If it is, then a 3-foot Cat5 cable going to the switch is going to be just fine. But if it turns out that this system controller is going to end up in a pit podium 10 feet away, and we're going to run cable underneath the carpet, well, you may need a 10 to 25 foot Cat5 cable to be shipped with the equipment. The laptop and printer that come with the system, you're going to have to figure out and talk to the casino, where do they want that housed? Is that going to be here, inside a pit podium? Are we going to connect a second Cat5 cable to the open network port on the server and allow the casino to have the server on their network so they can pull reports from their laptops? We also need to know how many system controllers are we going to need. This system right now is an all-in-one system underneath the table. But if we ran another Cat5 cable to the switch from another table, we could have 2 tables hooked up to this system. We could be running multiple tables on the system. Some sites, the tables are so far away and there's no ability to get network from one to the next, so it does require a system controller for each table. We do need to annotate that inside the checklist. When you have 2 system controllers, let's say we have a table system where one system controller here on this table, but then the other table is across the room or across the casino and we can't get to it, you can use just one laptop. You can walk the laptop from this table over to the next one, pull the reports, and then come back. So you don't have to have 2. When you are looking at housing everything inside the table, we need to make sure we talk to the facilities, people at the casino, to make sure that there's enough power. If there's only one outlet underneath the table and they've already got an accounting system running, a shuffler running, then you're not going to have enough power to be able to plug in all this equipment. One of the other things you need to think about, especially for electronics only, is where are these puck sensors going to come down, and are they going to be hitting this outer wall? For most of our installations, once you drill wherever the sensor is going to go, you've got enough space like this table does. But on some of the smaller tables, this 1 and number 6 sensor will end up so far out that once this hole is drilled, it actually either goes into this double ring, into the base itself, or it'll be really close to it, which causes us to have to either notch out an area to be able to fit the nut over, or you end up having to cut part of the nut off, bring the nut up, and then screw in the sensor from the top. Those are things you need to think about when you're looking at the table ahead of time. As you can see, a table like this would be an easy install because there's no cash box, there's no shuffler on this side, you have all this open space. But as soon as you add a shuffler, an accounting system, maybe another table sign that they have, and you add a cash box, or a drop box, it's really important to look at how much space do we have for our double-sided and our dealer display. So this side's not too bad. If you were to have a drink rail on the table, sometimes that cup comes down here, so that gives you no ability to screw this in. So you do need to measure how much space you have and figure out whether or not the cup that comes down from the drink rail is going to be in the way and hitting this this part of the mount. If it does, we end up having to add a piece of wood to bring this down with a cutout that goes around the drink rail that allows this to go in completely flush and then get screwed in.
The last questions on the checklist are, who is the person that technician needs to contact the day they come to do the install? Now, you may be the person filling out the checklist, but you may not be the technician who does the install that morning. Just write down the name, a contact number, maybe an email address of the person they need to get a hold of when they show up that day. And the reason we ask for who's installing on the checklist is so that we can talk to that technician if we see something that they need to know about ahead of time. And the reason we want to know who filled out the checklist is so we can go back and re-verify information with that technician so we can go back and re-verify information with the technician if we find something that we don't think is right or we have questions about.